And I would like to begin by introducing our webinar today, which is titled Engaging Champions on the Frontline. I have here with me Jill Frook, and she is a nurse educator, nursing practice, BPSO lead. Jill has over 20 years of experience caring for children, families, and caregivers within the healthcare system. Her favorite role throughout her career remains that of a nurse mentor. Jill is a passionate advocate for education and the implementation of best practices to improve health outcomes and increase nursing knowledge. In her current role as a nurse educator with nursing practice at CHEO, Jill has the unique opportunity to increase visibility and really drive BPSO work within her institution. So welcome, Jill, and thank you for being here. I would also like to introduce Lindsay Vanderhayden, is a seasoned nursing professional with over 16 years of specialized experience in pediatric care. Lindsay has worked in pediatric emergency room, pediatric intensive care unit, and inpatient medicine unit as a clinical instructor, nurse educator, and case coordinator. She is currently serving as a manager of health, human resource programs, and clinical projects within the nursing practice department. Lindsay excels in overseeing clinical externs, nursing students, internationally educated nurses, and new graduates from nursing programs that focus on enhancing successful transitions to practice. With a deep commitment to education and mentorship, Lindsay leverages extensive pediatric experience to guide and support the next generation of healthcare professionals, ensuring high standards of care and excellence. Lindsay, we welcome you here today. Thank you for being here. Okay, Jill and Lindsay, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that great introduction, Julianne. We are also very excited to be here. I'm just going to take control of the slideshow, hopefully. Perfect. Here we go. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today to discuss our initiative to increase engagement of our CHEO champions on the front line. We're very excited to share this journey with all of you. As Julianne said, my name is Jill, and I am the current Best Practice Spotlight Organization lead here at CHEO. I'll let Lindsay say hello.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Lindsay Vanderhayden, and I am the manager of our Health Human Resource programs, and I work very closely with Jill on BPSO initiatives at CHEO.
I would also like the time to start with a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge the land upon which we live, teach, learn, and heal. We pay respect to the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. As a champion for children's health and well-being, we honor the tiny feet of yesterday, today, and tomorrow as we walk together with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit on a path of reconciliation and healing. CHEO is located in Ottawa, Ontario, and I want to recognize that we live and gather on the traditional and unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin people, traditionally known as the Anishinaabe. Algonquin people are the original inhabitants of this wide swath of territory along the Ottawa River. Today's information webinar is all about engagement and motivation. At CHEO, our champions are on the front line and are instrumental in promoting evidence-based practice and are really the key players in the implementation and sustainability of best practice guidelines within their specific clinical areas. During the presentation today, we will discuss how we developed a strategy to increase engagement and motivation of our current champions and to encourage others to join the CHEO champion community. We will define CHEO and our corporate guiding principles that really aligned with our work and helped us to identify our professional practice goals for champion engagement. We will also discuss our approach and proudly share the impact of all of our work.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit more about CHEO. So we are CHEO, which stands for the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, and we serve children, pediatric youth from age 0 to 18 in their lifespan. And so the vision for CHEO is to provide the best life for every child and youth. CHEO is a children's hospital, but we are also a tertiary trauma center located in Ottawa, Ontario, and we serve a wide variety of patients, predominantly those in Eastern Ontario, Northern Ontario, Nunavut, as well as the Outaouais region of Quebec. At CHEO here, we have a variety of different specialists, doctors, nurses, allied health professionals, volunteers, researchers, but we are more than just that. We are also a children's treatment center, we're a research institute, we're a home care provider, and we go all above beyond what we can do to serve those children and youth in our community. At CHEO this past year, we served more than over 100,000 visits in our emergency department, over 180,000 visits in our outpatient clinics, as well as reaching 500,000 children throughout the Ottawa area. We are a small hospital, I would say, 167 beds, but that doesn't stop us. We have over 7,000 admissions each year, and we do strive to be an academic teaching center. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about, you can go ahead and flip to the next slide, Jill, our organizational objectives and guiding principles. And so at CHEO, what we really want to do is we want to use evidence to inform everything we do. So we really encourage innovation with all of our staff members at CHEO. And so having them really go into work every day and thinking about what they can do. So have that questioning culture and look at every simple thing that they're doing in a different lens. And so thinking about what could be different, ways to improve things, but also how we're going to be pulling in that constant evidence and best practice into what we're doing. So we really encourage people to be always on a knowledge journey here at CHEO so that we can pull kind of more evidence into all of our clinical care and practice. At CHEO, we also strongly support the idea of working as a team. So we really understand that the care that we provide for pediatric individuals is really dependent on the team. And so we have a variety of team members here in the hospital, nurses, RTs, physicians, child life workers, social workers, our ES team, our food services department, and we really believe in understanding everyone's kind of expertise, but really coming together as a collective group to ensure that we're always trying to learn from one another and where we can really encourage everyone to thrive in their environment. Our nursing professional practice goals that we wanted to focus on were really to reinvigorate our nursing and clinical staff engagement in evidence-based care. We really wanted to optimize the quality of care that we were providing based on our implemented BPGs. Currently, at the moment, we have 7 best practice guidelines that we have implemented here in the building. And we wanted to further the promotion of our nursing-led research, especially through the advanced clinical practice fellowships. And we also wanted to continue to foster a collaborative and interprofessional approach for best practice work and best practice guideline implementation at CHEO. This is going to talk a little bit about our BPSO journey. And so we have had a very interesting journey. We did start back in September 2019, was when we kind of initially started with our contract, and we're supposed to be in cohort 6, but that was delayed because we had launched our EHR at that time, our electronic health record, which was Epic, and that did take a lot of bandwidth and support. And so some of our BPG work was a little bit delayed in that time frame, but we initially went with kind of our launch for our full BPSO BPG for May 2020. And so I think probably you guys can all remember back to the year 2020, especially March. March 2020 was when COVID started. And so we had wanted to launch in 2020 because that was the year of the nurse. That was being celebrated for Nurses Week and by the WHO. But unfortunately, a lot of our implementation got stalled related to the pandemic. And so we very much had to shift a lot of our work to focusing back on the front lines and supporting those families and children that were in need. However, we continued to persevere and we worked through BPSO and BPG implementation over the pandemic and the few years, and we managed to get our designation that occurred in March 2023. And I would say that a lot of the BPSO journey that we've had here at CHEO has really humbled us and made us really become more resilient in our roles, because we were able to adapt to kind of every situation that we had and then pick up and kind of reinvigorate the BPSO journey. And so we've kind of done that once again, because many of you who might have been in adult hospitals might not remember, but back in January 2023, there was a severe kind of viral season that happened with among the pediatric hospitals. And so once again, we had to shift our focuses to the front line. And we actually that year opened up 2 ICUs and redeployed a bunch of staff. Jill, you're on mute.
I knew I was going to do that. I was trying to mute out. I apologize. Thanks, Lindsay. Now that Lindsay has given us a little bit of a background of CHEO's BPSO journey and identified really what our strategic objectives were and identified our nursing practice goals, I'm going to talk a little bit about our approach. So the first thing we wanted to do was really get a lot of champion feedback. We really wanted to start by taking a pulse of the champion network and BPSO knowledge at CHEO. We needed to get as much feedback from our current champions as we could in order to develop a strategy. We started by attending nursing unit huddles to speak about BPSO and identify knowledge gaps related to the program and how it impacts patient care at CHEO. We identified that there really was a lack of awareness around CHEO being designated as a best practice spotlight organization. And there were also some large gaps that we identified related to what best practice guidelines were and the role that they can play in improving health outcomes here at CHEO. What we decided to do was to host an open house with the goal really of providing information related to what RNA BPG program is, what being designated as an RNAO best practice spotlight organization means, talk about which best practice guidelines CHEO had implemented and the work and the outcomes of that implementation, really have it as an opportunity to engage current champions to learn about benefits of becoming a champion at CHEO, and really give an opportunity for current champions to learn more about our specific best practice guidelines, and really align with one that they feel passionate about. The open house took place on November the 2nd, and with the hope that many of our frontline staff would be able to attend. It ran from 12 o'clock until 1600, and we determined it a success. We had over 60 attendees from multidiscipline areas at CHEO. I will note that we also provided refreshments, and we had some pretty great draw prizes that we were sure were an incentive for engagement in that open house. Once we were confident at this point that we had ignited enough curiosity and discussion of BPSO and what a CHEO champion was among our frontline healthcare providers, we thought we might have enough uptake for an educational offering related to best practice spotlight organization. We aligned these education days with our corporate education calendar for the spring and the winter to really ensure utmost visibility and awareness, with the hopes that numbers would be robust and we would have a really good turnout for these days. We provided this education on 3 different dates to ensure that the best chance for shift workers to attend these days. And we titled these education days Breakfast of Champions. And once again, we provided breakfast to our attendees and as an incentive to join us. We had 2 really important goals for the Breakfast of Champion Days. The first being to increase knowledge and pride of CHEO as a best practice spotlight organization. And our second goal was really to reach out and obtain feedback from current champions and those who might be interested in becoming a champion. We posed questions such as, what would motivate champion engagement? How would you like to receive information about BPSO work? What are some barriers to engaging as a champion? We posed these questions to working groups with a hope that they would ignite good discussion and really provide us with some important insight from frontline healthcare providers. We received great feedback, and we were very excited by the engagement and discussion that these questions gave us.
So as a result of our BPSO open house, Jill and I attending and visiting unit huddles and feedback from the working groups during the Breakfast of Champions Day, we were able to pull out some common themes identified that are identified on this slide. So really what we wanted to do was focus on increasing the visibility through multiple modes of information dissemination. We wanted to ensure that we increase the awareness of what an RNAO champion was at CHEO, as well as what was expected from a champion. We wanted to create a desire for resources to support champions at CHEO, and also create the notion and desire for protected time and professional development for those wanting to learn about BPSO work and BPG work at CHEO. So we decided to create a strategic plan that was both clear and effective in addressing the key factors for improving BPSO engagement. We identified 4 strategic buckets that effectively tackled both structural and practical elements of nursing practice and nursing engagement in BPSO at CHEO. So bucket number 1 was increasing visibility. So we look at increasing visibility as the crucial first step because it helps ensure that the work of CHEO champions and the importance of BPGs are recognized across the organization. Visibility enhances awareness of the role and significance of the champions within the organization. Number 2 was defining the role of the CHEO champions. We felt that clarifying and formalizing the role of CHEO champions helped reduce the ambiguity and ensure that everyone was known what was expected of them. Having a clear defined role makes it easier for nurses to take on champion duties and for leaders to support them in those duties. We also wanted to create resources to sustain and promote ongoing BPG work at CHEO. We looked at this as sustaining and promoting BPGs requires champions and nursing staff, but it also requires them to have the necessary tools, materials, and an ongoing support. Number 4 was education and protected time. Education is vital for maintaining high standards of practice and ensuring that all members remain up to date with the latest guidelines and research. Offering protected time allows nurses to engage in learning and apply what they've learned without worrying about patient care responsibilities. So it really gives them that ability to focus on the work that they're doing related to BPSO.
I'm just trying to advance. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Great. Thanks, Lindsay. So once we had developed our buckets, we had to come up with ways to fill these buckets. So our first bucket was increasing visibility. We really wanted to make sure that we were doing this through multiple modes of delivery, as was identified as important during the Breakfast of Champion feedback sessions. Where can I find out about CHEO Champion resources, stories, and education? This was a common question that I heard echoed continuously within the halls of CHEO. We needed to come up with multiple ways to increase visibility and share the pride of CHEO as a best practice spotlight organization. We used the following modes of information delivery to increase visibility. We had our RNAO bulletin board, as you can see in the first picture there, in a highly visible area in the hallway to the cafeteria, as well as to the parking lot. It really caught a lot of traffic on their way to breaks and entering and exiting the building. We updated this bulletin board frequently to reflect ongoing best practice guideline work, education events, and champion stories. The next mode of delivery was our CHEOnet internal website, as you can see in the second picture. We were able to get our own page and entitled it RNAO BPSO. Here we were able to update and share all resources related to the best practice guideline program. We updated what work was going on related to our best practice guidelines. We shared our fellowships through the ACPF program at RNAO, and we also shared multiple stories and successes of our champions. And finally, we started sending out monthly newsletters through email. This newsletter is sent out monthly by email to all CHEO staff. It gets sent to all of the champions. I apologize. It gets sent to all of the CHEO champions. And it really shows ways to get involved with best practice guideline work at CHEO, celebrate accomplishments, share stories, talk about educational offerings as well. This monthly newsletter is also posted on CHEO's internal RNAO BPSO website. Another way we really thought would be beneficial in increasing visibility is really to tell the stories of our champions. These champion stories were posted in our monthly newsletter, our external, as well as our internal CHEO websites and across our social media platforms. And then finally, another great way that we came up with to increase visibility was really to leverage social media. We know that over 62% of the population uses social media, and they spend on average over 2 hours of time on those social media platforms. So we thought leveraging this power of social media was a fantastic way to increase visibility of BPSO at CHEO. We also engaged with our communications team to ensure that we kept branding guidelines in check, as well as followed all of our social media guidelines as well.
The second bucket of work that we wanted to focus on was defining what it was to be a CHEO champion and what exactly that role. A key barrier that we received during many of our open house sessions and breakfasts of champions was that people weren't totally sure of what was expected of them of an RNAO champion. So we aim to create a clear universal definition of what it means to be an RNAO champion by identifying common characteristics that we know over 100,000 members in the RNAO network share. So we look at CHEO champions for BPSO as nurses or allied health professionals who demonstrate initiative and commitment to best practices, those who are passionate about specific BPG topics and act as change agents to lead and facilitate the implementation of best practices. They also role model positive clinical leadership and inspire others to drive quality improvements in patient care. To support engaged current CHEO champions, we needed to look at what was expected of them. So really, we look at our CHEO champions as those who are able to promote evidence-based practice. We clearly outlined their expectations by ensuring that we aligned with our CHEO guiding principles and professional practice goals. The expectations include aligning the CHEO champions with a specific BPG working group, educating other health professionals about best practices, promoting BPG recommendations in their clinical areas, mentoring others to become champions, attending quarterly BPG information sessions, and participating in RNAO best practice champion webinars. By setting these clear expectations, we aim to eliminate the confusion around the role of CHEO champions and wanted to ensure that they could effectively promote and sustain BPGs in their clinical areas. We next identified what exactly was expected of the CHEO champions. And so we wanted to have our current champions be supported and engaged in promoting evidence-based practice at CHEO. We wanted to ensure that the work that we did was focusing and developing upon our organizational and guiding principles. So ensuring that we are using evidence to inform everything we do, as well as aiming to reinvigorate our clinical staff's engagement in evidence-based practice, all while optimizing the quality of care implemented here at CHEO.
Fantastic. And our next bucket was really providing the resources for support of our champions to promote and sustain best practice guidelines on the front line. This really aligned well with, as Lindsay said, optimizing the quality of care, and also aligned well with CHEO's guiding principle of using evidence to promote everything that we do. One of the ways we are educating champions at CHEO about these resources is we provide quarterly best practice guideline virtual information sessions. These quick 10-minute sessions are offered at varying times to ensure that all frontline staff are able to attend. We offer upwards of 3 sessions for each best practice guideline that we have implemented at CHEO. The goal of offering these sessions is to update champions on work being done related to their specific best practice guideline, to invite champions to join ongoing work projects and share new resources with champions to really support implementation and sustainability of these best practice guidelines on the front line. It's also important to share our outcomes, and this is how we do that. We want to make sure that our champions can see the impact of their efforts in improving health outcomes for our patients and families here at CHEO. These sessions also provide them with the tools to identify learning gaps associated with a specific best practice guideline. That way, the CHEO champions can provide education and support to really ensure best practice are being implemented and sustained within their clinical areas. The expected outcome of these sessions is really to ensure that all of our CHEO champions on the front line have the knowledge, the tools, and the resources to really promote and sustain those best practice guidelines within their clinical areas. In addition to these virtual sessions, and really included in these virtual sessions, we provide champions with a list of specific things that they can do within their clinical areas to promote best practice guidelines that they have aligned with. All of our CHEO champions are provided with a clear and thorough list of what they can do to promote their BPGs. An example of this is included on this slide that we provided for our breastfeeding champions. Things like sharing the steps on how and when to consult our lactation support team, ensuring all breastfeeding families have access to breast pumping kits, and practice how to set them up. So each one of our best practice guidelines has clear expectations of what you can do as a best practice guideline champion to promote those best practice guidelines on the front line. And then finally, our fourth and final bucket was really to find a way to meet that desire for protected time and professional development to learn more about BPSO and best practice guideline work at CHEO. It was important that we found a way to provide protected and supported time for education and professional development. We decided that one way to do this was to embed best practice guideline focused education into our already established spring and fall education offerings provided by our nursing practice team. For example, this fall we provided education on pain, pressure injuries, asthma, as well as breastfeeding. These best practice guideline aligned education days focused on highlighting the work done through best practice guideline implementation and really provided education related specifically to best practices at CHEO. We also provided education during these days on the best practice guideline program, how guidelines were developed, and highly specific ways around how you can get involved as a champion related to these specific guidelines. It was a great way to provide education related to the best practice guideline program and identify best practice work being done at CHEO, as well as ensuring protected and compensated time to learn about this. The second thing that we wanted to do that we thought would be a great way to protect time and really promote our nursing practice goal of nursing research, nursing-led research, was really to promote nurses applying for the RNAO ACFP program. We are working really hard at CHEO to support nurses as they apply for these fellowship programs. We are collaborating with our nursing research team here at CHEO, and they've really stepped up to work as mentors for the application process and really throughout the entire fellowship program. We have held virtual as well as in-person information sessions that speak about what the fellowship program is and how to apply. We also are holding support sessions that bring past fellows to meet with current fellows or people that have a desire to pursue a fellowship and really form a community of support around applying for these fellowships. It's actually really exciting to see the excitement and the engagement that has occurred by linking our past fellows with our hopefully future fellows here at CHEO.
Thank you, Jill. And I'll also add, we often record the sessions and make sure that they're available on our internal CHEOnet system for those who can attend, so they can go on and watch them later on, whether that be on a night shift or however best suits them. So we're going to really highlight the impact of our engagement strategy. And so this slide right here is from January 2023. And so we're excited to share the results of our engagement strategy. And so this was before we launched our engagement plan with working with our comms team and doing all of the various breakfasts of champions. And so we had 128 champions that represented about 14% of the nurses at CHEO, with the highest engagement of 16 champions in our vascular access best practice guideline, and the lowest within our patient and family centered care best practice guideline at 8 champions. It was clear that without a defined strategy, we were not effectively motivating and inspiring some of our champions here at the building. And then the next slide is going to talk about the impact of our engagement strategy. And so this slide really shows that post our work with all the various things that we've been talking about today in the webinar. This was taken in October 2024. And so it goes to show that we increased our number of champions to 21%. So that I feel is a significant boost of 7% over just kind of a short time frame of about 8 months. And you can see that we really increased a lot of our best practice guideline aligned champion numbers. And so our vascular access aligned champions rose to 25, as well as our number of person and family-centered care best practice guideline champions rose from 8 to having now 30 of them. And so previously our highest number of aligned BPGs was 16, but post-engagement now we had at least 30 champions aligned with one BPG. I do feel like this is quite a remarkable result, demonstrating that, you know, if you motivate your champions, you promote, sustain, communicate, and work with those on the front line, that you can really be successful in implementing best practice champions.
And thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn about our strategy to really motivate and engage our champions at CHEO. It's really a journey that we want to share, share our ideas, share our strategy, and that we're really proud to celebrate here at CHEO. So thank you much for joining myself and Lindsay. We really appreciate your time, and we're looking forward to questions and any feedback that you might have.
Wow, thank you so much, Jill and Lindsay. It's amazing to see all the work you have done and so well planned and delivered your approach to implementation of BPGs and such a wonderful success of implementation of 7 BPGs. Congratulations. That is just wonderful. And thank you for sharing your approach and all your planning and the success of that. We have a question here from Carla that I'm going to go ahead and read out, but I do encourage other participants to please put your questions in the chat, and Jill and Lindsay are here to respond to them. So Carla is saying great engagement, which is so true, but she's wondering, are the virtual sessions well attended?
Honestly, that's a fantastic question. They were attended, and I'm hoping that as we continue with our strategy of engagement, the uptake and the attendance will increase. We wanted to make sure that we offered them at really varying times. So they were offered in the morning to capture people coming off the night shift. They were offered in the mid-afternoon to catch people that might be on break. And they were offered later into the evening to really try and capture all of those frontline healthcare workers that are working on the front lines and are working shift work. Um, they were, I would say, relatively well attended. We definitely had attendance for each one of the best practice guidelines. And as I said, the hope is to, as our engagement continues, to get more uptake and more people coming to access those virtual sessions. We also wanted to make sure they were super short so that they could pop in, listen for 10 minutes, get updated, and then go on with their day or go on with their break. So those were kind of the focus of making them short and making them in multiple different times and areas. And the hope is that the engagement and the attendance will increase.
Wow, that's wonderful. And you've caught a lot of our participants' attention here regarding the virtual meetings. Catherine is asking and saying that she likes the decision to have virtual meetings that were just 10 minutes. Was this done intentionally? And were the meetings recorded for those unable to attend? I think you did respond to some of that, Jill, but do you want to add anything, Lindsay, to that?
Yeah, I would say that this was definitely an intentional decision upon Jill and mine's part to make the meetings kind of limited in time because we recognize that as frontline staff and those who were on the unit with patient assignments that often stepping away for, more than 10 minutes does seem like something that is not always capable. And so we definitely made sure that we were intentional there. They could pop off with just even on their cell phone in a quiet corner or an empty room or anything like that. And then kind of not really miss out on any of their work that they're doing on the unit where they kind of, they might just have a buddy be listening out for a few minutes and then they could hop back on to the unit and engage in their tasks as they were.
That's wonderful. And Judy Ann is our participant that is joining us from Jamaica. Thank you again, Judy Ann, for joining us from so far away. We're glad you're here. And her comments are that this is excellent and very practical for the clinical staff. So she's sending out a kudos for that. That's wonderful. I do have another question here. Can you speak more about leveraging social media to increase visibility?
Yeah, actually, it was something that number one really was introduced to us because it is part of the contract with the RNAO is to really increase visibility. And one of the ways that we do that with our new generation, they utilize social media. Like I said, 62% of people use it, and they spend on average of over 2 hours a day on social media platforms. So we really wanted from the feedback of our current champions and potentially future champions that they wanted different ways of learning and hearing about BPSO. So we really identified social media as a way that we can do this. And if you do have access to a communications team within your centers, that's a great start. They have the ability to make sure you're following branding guidelines. They really help you make sure that your stories that you're telling are aligning with your strategic direction for your institution. They really help you devise a theme, which is important, so that you have a theme that's consistent across all social media platforms. And they really help you identify how you're going to be telling these stories to keep things consistent. So when you have a plan and a consistent strategy for social media, it really is really a very effective tool to reach a large audience, both internally within your institution as well as externally within the community about BPSO work at CHEO.
Yeah, and I'll
Very
also add that we found that working with our comms team was very impactful for a lot of our nurses. And so, I mean, Jill and I specifically kind of target days throughout the year. So I don't know if you had seen on the calendar, but I think it's in January, there's IV Nurse Day. So we made sure that we had a story going out from our communication team onto our various social media platforms, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, highlighting the success of our vascular access team and the work that we've been doing with BPSO. And then on Valentine's Day, we made sure that we highlighted our person and family centered care BPG by focusing on our heart education that we've been doing with frontline staff and highlighting them. And so for us, it's very impactful from kind of a double side of the staff seeing themselves being recognized in these stories and having them shared on social media, but also having it put out to the community and those around in Ottawa to say like, wow, look at what the nurses are doing at CHEO. This is amazing. And hoping that we can buy more intake into BPSO from external lens, but also internal by celebrating our nurses.
Very nice. Thank you. I have a comment and a question. Kathy is commenting, thank you for a very motivating presentation, very thoughtful strategies, definitely remarkable success achievements in your BPG work. That's very nice. Thank you, Kathy, for that comment. And Magdalene has a question. Were the champions paid any differently in promoting their best practice recommendations, and are they paid for quarterly BPG info sessions? So just looking on if they had to join these sessions, are they compensated with pay?
They're not compensated with pay for joining the virtual information sessions. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to make the sessions 10 minutes. We felt that that wasn't a huge ask. It could be accomplished while they were at work, at the end of their shift. So no, there was no increased compensation for those virtual sessions. And the promotion of the best practice guideline recommendations on the front line, our goal was to really pick things that they were already doing as nurses that they may not be aware of are best practice or evidence-based, and really asking them to ensure that everybody in their clinical area, their colleagues are aware that these are best practice guideline recommendations and that they are evidence-based, and they do come from best practice guidelines put out by the RNAO. So it was more asking them to do things that they were already doing as part of their work, and really didn't add anything in addition to caring for the patients on the front line. So these were frontline workers that we were really trying to target, and really not trying to ask more of them than really what they were already doing, but just might not be aware of is evidence-based.
And I'll also add that within our institution, we have what we call like a huddle culture. And so a lot of the units, as well as the various teams, have a specific designated board where, if I'm working on the medicine unit, it's Tuesday at 2 p.m. Everyone gets together that's working. The manager comes out. Different people pop into huddles. And so we kind of already had built-in structure for a lot of people to go and have this venue to share this information. And so encouraging those that are champions, like when you're working on Tuesdays or Thursdays, whenever your unit huddles are, to go ahead and promote some of these best practice guidelines and BPG work and best practices and strategies at your huddle with your team.
Wow, that's great. Wonderful. And we do have another question just asking about protected time. Can you elaborate on how you promoted protective time for education and professional development? I know you've touched a bit upon it, but do you have anything to add to that?
I think this is always something that is always in the forefront of our minds and is always something that is identified as a barrier. We know that there's been so much change. There's a lot of change resistance. We've been asking so much of our frontline workers related to COVID, related to the HHR crisis, that they just feel they can't take on anything more. So the way that we try to do here at CHEO is really identify ways that we're already providing protected and compensated time to our nurses here at CHEO. And really working within nursing practice is a great place for me to sit as a best practice spotlight organization lead, because I worked really closely with our other nurse educator in nursing practice to really provide BPG education that occurs during corporate education. Corporate education is already solidified in CHEO and is provided in the spring and the fall, and people sign up for it and they go to these sessions and they're compensated for their time, and it's a great it's multidisciplinary. People can join and learn. So that was one of the ways that we're like, this is where we can really tack on BPG work and talk about BPSO in a platform that's already well established at CHEO.
That's wonderful. That's great. And Lindsay, do you have anything to add to that? I don't see any other questions, and but we do still have a little bit of time. Or any other comments from Jill and Lindsay?
No, I just want to say thank you for having us. We feel like we've had some amazing questions, and happy to hear that everyone has found the presentation engaging, and hopefully we've given you guys some ideas to take back to your own institutions.
Oh, I do have one last question. If I can jump in here before we lose Jill and Lindsay. How many ACPFs do you currently have?
Currently right now, it's the proposal time right now for the winter session. So right now, nurses and NPs that are participating in our information and virtual sessions, there's 7 of them that are actively and interested in pursuing a fellowship. And I think historically, I feel like we've had, I want to say 7, if not more, fellowships that were successful and really brought great impact to CHEO. So also a really good way to provide dedicated and compensated and supported time for nursing professional advancement.
Yeah, and I'll
And
add that in the last year, we've really been developing our community of practice for research here at CHEO. And so in this past year, we've had like a lead research nursing scientist role that's been implemented. We also have a chair of our research nursing studies. And so they've been really instrumental in working with us to help promote ACPF as kind of that stepping stone for a lot of nurses to kind of dip their toes into that research world and implement a quality improvement practice by having that protected time once supported by the RNAO and approved.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we've been able to build upon at our institution. And so really trying to like push that platform forward that, nurses do research. And we are, I know at our institution, we're the largest health professional group in the building. And so why not promote more nursing research and get nurses involved?
that's great. And just the second part to that question was who's usually responsible for mentoring them? Lindsay, is it anyone different than what you've mentioned, or is it that team just working together?
So it's mostly that team just working together. And because we have had that lead nurse research scientist role, like she's been
Mhm.
taking on kind of that I will mentor you guys, I can support you through this. And so we also have a great culture here where, a lot of our past ACPF fellows are willing to, reach out to me. I can help you. I can work with you through the application. I've done it. And then a lot of managers as well, like are very supportive of it. And so giving people time to work on those applications as well as, read over them and support them. And then also networking with other individuals in the hospital if you need other inputs or services or supports.
That's amazing. The engagement is from your team and your coworkers is just incredible to hear about and of course to see in your results. So congratulations on that, Jill and Lindsay, to you both for leading that and to your team for all the work they're doing. And we look forward to as you continue this work and to hear from you more. So thank you again for joining us. And we're going to be signing off now. Thank you to all the participants for joining us from near and far. And we hope that you have a great Friday afternoon.